Greetings, my name is JC,
And I'm Ian.
and this is the Gamer's Gaiden. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy.
Yeah, it's an important milestone for us.
Yeah.
This is episode number 20,
Woohoo!
and Final Fantasy is an important game to us.
Yeah.
Important game series. So
Yeah, definitely many years of enjoyment from the series for sure. But before we get into that, Ian, what have you been playing this week?
well, we've with Bloodstained Ritual of the Night
Mhm.
coming out on Tuesday
For the Switch.
for the Switch. Yeah, it is out on everything else. Well, on the PS4 and Xbox One right now.
Yeah, and PC.
And PC, but comes out on the Switch on Tuesday, which I think is kind of the ideal place for it.
Yeah, me too.
I had picked up a copy of the limited run physical release of Curse of the Moon, and I cracked that open last week. Finally, hesitantly, because it was a beautiful package.
I'm
was,
surprised you didn't just keep it sealed and then buy the download for like $12.
You know what? Honestly, after looking at it, I'm not going to resell it. I would rather actually get enjoyment out of it. If you want to see the way to release a boxed copy of something, like a special edition release of something, that really was kind of the perfect way. Anyways, I played through the game, which doesn't take a tremendous amount of time.
Yeah.
But it was a whole lot of fun. Just right back to classic Castlevania.
Yeah, because if I understand correctly, I have it as well. Not the limited run version, but I downloaded the digital copy of it, and I think there's more than one ending, and like some endings take an hour, some endings take a couple of hours. It's pretty short, and because I think there's a couple endings.
There's a couple different endings based on characters, and I will, from my understanding, you should play through it at least twice to get the like actual ending.
Yeah. I really liked how it was like modeled to look like the Castlevania 3 for the Nintendo.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah, except you could actually switch characters on the fly, which was just amazing.
Yeah.
You know, being able to utilize different powers at different spots to get to, like, you know, there'd be different paths, like shortcuts through levels.
Yeah.
And as long as you had that character alive, you could use that little shortcut. So it was really well done, and I was really happy with the experience overall. I'm really excited for Ritual of the Night.
Yeah.
And I'll be talking a bunch about that next week. But I played through that, finished that. I also, with all the VR stuff that I've been doing recently, I finally gave the VR missions in Ace Combat 7 a shot.
Cool. How did that go?
I almost puked right away. The movement is just it's crazy. But once I kind of got settled in, it did take me like a good 5 minutes. Maybe I'm just not accustomed to that. Maybe I'm just a bit soft. But yeah, once I got settled in and I was used to the movement, man, it was the way to play Ace Combat 7. I was so disappointed that you didn't have access to more planes. Yeah, the more planes would have been just so much better. Yeah. But I also understand that they would have to model all the cockpits, and it would just be a nightmare.
Yeah, I whenever I played the VR missions for Ace Combat 7, I basically was kind of hoping that the whole game would be like that. Maybe Ace Combat 8 will be like a hybrid between the two of them, where you can play either with or without VR, kind of like Resident Evil 7 or something like that.
Yeah, and like I found it so much more intuitive.
Yeah,
because I'm actually tracking the other like the enemy planes.
Yeah, and you can actually
aircraft with my
around.
eyes.
Yeah,
and I'm moving myself in the direction with my controls, but I can actually follow them visually, and that makes such a difference because I find in the normal game, you're like just watching the mini map and trying to line something up until you see it pop up in front of you, and then you're like, oh, there it is, and you fire. Yeah, but this was just it was so much more intuitive, a lot more fun. And I was surprised at my reaction to it, especially after playing through all of Trover, Astrobot, and Blood and Truth within the span of like a week.
Right.
And I had long play sessions with each of them with no weird or ill effects, whereas this was like, it took me about 5 minutes to get adjusted to it, and then I played through. I did 2 of the 3 missions, because I think there's only the 3. And yeah, I got the 2 done, and I'm like, I gotta take a break, and it took me like an hour to feel comfortable again.
Right.
It's just the motion and everything, man. It really surprised me that I would have that kind of reaction after playing something for a long period of time and not having any kind of weird effects. Oh yeah, by the way, I played a little bit more Anthem. It's a pretty decent $40 game. JC, what else have you been playing? I won't cut that quickly. I did a bit of the multiplayer with Superfan Rachel. I hated the audio, or not the audio, the voice chat.
Okay.
We couldn't connect through.
Yeah, we used the PlayStation Network chat instead of the in-game chat because it kept on cutting out.
Yeah, and we couldn't connect through the PSN chat. We had to use the in-game one. I know it was really odd. Yeah, for some reason we just couldn't. We could not make that connection. So it was like we would be talking and then like transition to a zone and like hard cut, and I'm like, oh yeah. Oh, okay, by the way, this is what I was just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the gameplay's fine. Like I said, it's a pretty decent $40 game. It's at least like...
Yeah, they definitely fixed some stuff from what I understand, but they're still lacking content. But, I mean, yeah.
There's a lot about it that I wouldn't like there's a lot about it that I would really dislike if I spent like $120 on it.
Sure.
But because I spent $40, my best comparison would be the last $40 game that I bought, which was Generation Zero.
Okay.
Which was solid 5 out of 10.
Right.
And at $40, I'd give this a 7.5.
I would say that's very forgiving, but
yeah. Also we're talking $40, right? Like it's my expectation of a game that I paid $40 for is completely different from a game that I pay $80 for.
That's fair.
Right? I expect if I'm paying $80 for that,
yeah,
I'm expecting that production value. You know, they really want my money.
Yeah, I try not to look at the price of a game to kind of weighted average the rating that I give it, but
well, I'm not like I'm not saying I would give an indie game that I spent $3 on. Like, I mean, I played a whole bunch of SteamWorld Heist recently, which I picked up for $1.50.
Right.
And it is amazing. And I'm not, like, I wouldn't even consider being like, this is amazing at $1.50.
Sure.
Like, it is. Like, for $1.50, shit, the amount of gameplay that I've got out of that is crazy. But, you know, I also spent $50 on Blood and Truth. Right. Which was a 4 to 5 hour experience.
Sure.
And I loved it.
But that game actually looks really, really good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it is. And I am forgiving about some of the stuff.
Yeah.
But it's, again, that's my expectation at $40 for like something I'm just going to sit down and play.
Yeah.
This is a decent Iron Man game. The only thing that would make this better is in VR, and then I would guarantee puke. So yeah, anyways, that's enough about me rambling on about shitty Anthem, because I know JC's like, shut your whore mouth about Anthem.
I've already uninstalled it. I mean, you asked me if I wanted to play it. I'm just like, yeah, maybe. Nah. I already installed it. I'm not wasting more space on it.
We'll try. I'll try to convince him.
All right.
Tell him to play with me. Play Anthem with me. What have you been playing this week, JC?
So, on Friday, Crash Team Racing came out.
Yeah.
Yay. I used to love that game as a kid. It is exactly how I remember, and it is fantastic. So, the reskin and the upskilling and the care that they gave to Crash Team Racing is the same that they gave with the Insane Trilogy. It looks really, really good. The game plays very similarly, but I will say for 15-ish, 18 years that I haven't played the game, I've definitely lost my my skill level of the game. I used to be really, really good at the game. In fact, I'm pretty sure I got like 95 to 100% completion for the PlayStation game. And there's just some of them that I just wasn't able to complete some of the time trials and stuff like that, if I recall correctly. I'd have to bring up an old save to fully remember, but
bring it up.
I should. But yeah, it's got a lot to do in the game, and the game is pretty difficult. Whereas like Mario Kart 7, you can basically play like 50cc or 100cc just passively and kind of beat it.
Yeah, I have.
And this on medium, if you don't know how to power slide or don't know the ins and outs of the tracks and stuff like that, you will lose. You have to learn the track and get good at it in order to actually progress in the game.
That's kind of refreshing.
Yeah, it is actually. The game is, actually kind of difficult if you're not used to that style of play. And yeah, I remembered the power sliding mechanic because basically you got to like slide and drift, and then you got to hit the other like R1 or L button depending on which way you do it. I jump with R1 and then power drift with L1, but you can do it the other way around. Whenever your smoke is black, you have to like hit the button and then it'll jut out a boost, and you do that 3 times in a row, and you basically get extended boost.
Okay.
And you can also do that off of jumps and then just kind of like get boosts and stuff like that. And then certain characters are very good at certain tracks, and you can tell because like the same person will always get like the top 2 positions on like certain tracks and stuff like that. So you can always expect them to be doing very, very well on the certain tracks. The tracks are very varied. It's no different than the original game, really. There is some extra content, which I'll get into a second, but it's basically the first 2 Crash Racing games, because I think there's some added tracks from the second game, but I haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
But the main game's tracks have a lot of variance to them. They're not similar at all. Some of them have different weather effects and different elemental effects like sliding and ice and stuff like that.
Okay.
Where in certain sections of them, you have to worry about that. And every racer is different. So you can play with Crash, who's kind of like the jack of all trades, or you can play as the Panda, for example, who has a little bit better handling but is really, really slow. At first, or Coco, who has she's the person who I play because I like characters with fast acceleration. So I generally play, because usually if there's a lot of turns and stuff like that, acceleration, in my opinion, with the drifting in those games is a really good combination for how I play kart racers.
That makes sense.
So I play like Peach or Coco or like racers that are similar to that regard. And yeah, it's just a fantastic game. But I would say that like if you're a kart racer fan and you like the easiness of, let's say, Sonic Racing or Mario Kart, this game is probably not for you. But if you remember playing the original Crash Team Racing and got used to the difference in difficulty, not that it's a super hard game because it's not like Dark Souls or something like that.
Yeah.
But it is definitely different, and I have always enjoyed that difference between the game because it was always my favorite kart racer. Then it's definitely a game worth looking at to pick up. The other things that you can do in the game are there's time trials where each of the tracks have like, you can beat them and you get a cup, and then you can get CTR, which are the letters, and then if you get them all and get first place, then you get a CTR token, and also you can get a time trial token where there's boxes scattered around the track, and there's like a 3, 2, or 1. And basically, if you get it, it stops time for a certain amount of time. So that basically goes to like, you have to know the track. So if you know how to power slide in certain sections and skip certain areas and then get the boxes and stuff like that and then do it perfectly, then you can basically get it in the time allotted. And you basically, you wouldn't be able to do that just by driving through the track, really.
Okay.
And as you play the game and get better at it, these things become easier for you, especially since the tracks do get harder and harder. And there's definitely some easier tracks and harder tracks, like Cortex's Castle, for example, is one of the hard like tracks with like massive 90-degree turns and stuff like that. Yeah, there's one track with like you've gotten like good at the game whenever you can power slide up the one track where there's a tower and it's basically 90-degree turns constantly up the entire level to get up, to go through the track to get back down to the start. Whenever you can power slide through there without like screwing up and actually hit the boost on the very top part, that's whenever you know you've gotten good. I had to play that track about like 3 times, and then I started like remembering when to power slide and stuff like that and how to jump in certain areas because there's very good timing to it. But yeah, so there's all of that, and the new things that they've added in is you're getting tokens for actually playing the tracks now. They're kind of like Cyberbucks or something like that, like RP points kind of.
Okay.
But you get them for free, and like this not something you can pay for, and you get like they're completely cosmetic, so you can get different colored skins for your carts, different carts, much like Mario Kart 8. and different skins for your characters and stuff like that. And you can unlock them for free just by playing the game, and also you can unlock them by using the tokens, which is really really cool. So I thought that was a neat added feature to it. It's a little bit of extra work that they put into the game to give people something to do, because as you're playing the game and getting these tokens, then you can, like, let's say you play Dr. Cortex a lot and you want to get like a cool card that only you can get and stuff like that. It's got a bunch of stuff like that.
Yeah, like it gives you something to work towards as opposed to just like constantly playing the game over and over again. What were you playing it on?
I got it on the Switch.
Okay, yeah, that seems like a really good place for it.
I wanted to get it on the Switch because of the portability of it, and then I can just hand people like a Pro Controller or something like that, or the Joy-Cons, and then you can actually play 4-player on it. So I have the availability to actually do that. I was thinking about getting on the PlayStation 4, and I will say that with this game, generally with a lot of games, I do use the digital pad, but with like kart racers, I use the analog stick. And because the analog stick isn't in the same section, I think my brain needs to be rewired because I'm so used to using it at the lower access points instead of up off the axis. So I'm trying to get used to, because I remember with power sliding, you'd have to like jut the stick like left and right to make sure that you're like sliding correctly to not overslide basically. Because then you would turn too quickly into like the out of bounds. So because of like, it's just a little bit awkward for me because I'm pretty sure like my 15-year-old memories of this game, whenever the game first came out, I played it for years and down tons of hours on it, and yeah, so that I think is messing me up a little bit. Yeah, well, there's also a battle royale mode as well. I think
of course there's a battle royale mode,
but I think
there has to be.
I think that's one of the parts where they brought in some of the GameCube tracks in, so that there was more battle royale tracks. But they're pretty varied, and from I haven't played it on the Switch yet, but I remember them being actually pretty good maps, just like the Mario Kart ones. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do. Definitely a lot of stuff to do. The one thing I do not like about the game, there's loading times, just like Anthem. Like,
wow.
Yeah, so they're like 30 seconds to a minute long, and you have a hub world, and then you can drive around the hub world, and you go to different tracks within the hub world, and then getting to the actual track is about 30 seconds to a minute. And then if you need to retry a track, that's only about 10 seconds, so that's not that bad. If you want to restart it or something like that, or to retry it after you've not gotten first, and you need to, because you have to get first in every single rack. It's not like top 4 or anything.
Yeah. Now, do you think that that's a result of it being on the Switch? Do you think that those load times would be better on console?
I don't know. It might be faster if you digitally downloaded it, but like if it was on the PS4, you'd still be like reading off a disc hypothetically. So it's on a cartridge. You'd think that the cartridge speed would be faster.
You'd think so, but I mean, you got better processing power on the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I did see some reviews on the game, and people were complaining in the comments about the load times, but like everybody else is like, yeah, this is the Crash Team Racing that I remember and stuff like that. So it's good to see that the fans have the same sentiment that I have.
Yeah,
because even regardless, like I grew up with one-time speed CD-ROM discs, like on the computer and like on the PlayStation 2, two-time CD-ROM. Like I'm accustomed to very slow load times. So it's not that big of a problem for me. But I'm just like, yeah, that's a lot slower than what normal games are. So yeah, that's kind of why I bring it up. Yeah.
Anything else you were playing?
I have been playing quite a bit of League. I played a bunch with friends, and right now with the summer split happening, with the LEC and the LCS, there's a trials pass that you can get for either or.
Always?
So I got the LEC trial pass, and I've been trying to complete all the quests with it. Because it's like play a certain number of games or watch a certain number of like pro esports games and stuff like that. So I've been just kind of like passively keeping up with that, and I played a few ranked games, and I've gained some LP, so that's pretty cool.
Congrats.
But yeah, other than just like that and just playing some games back and forth and stuff like that in my spare time, yeah, I'm playing League and having some fun with that. And I've come to realize that Leona is a band that I'm like permabanning right now. Like I'm terrified of Pyke because I don't like characters with an execute. Especially with like I like to play dangerously and have low amount of health because I know I can burst you. So like big deal, like I'll burst you before you even get to me. Yeah. Unless you burst me, obviously, right? But Pyke just walks up to you and he executes you with his R, right? So I've always banned Pyke in the past. But Leona is like combos with some of the strong ADCs that are strong right now because of the itemization. I've just been permabanning Leona basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
As you can tell by my indifference, I haven't played League in a long time. Not indifference. My lack of. Oh yeah, I understand completely.
Yeah. I've been missing you a little bit, but
I'm sorry, buddy.
that's okay.
You can't play with me anyways. You're professional now.
I guess if you say so. But other than that, I toyed around with the Mega SG a little bit more. I finally got the update to work. Got the memory card formatted and then the patch onto it, and then upgraded my version from 2.9 to 4.5, which is the newest version. And it fixed all my problems.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I played a handful of games. I plugged in Sonic 1 again. I used the level select code to get to the levels that I noticed some lag. I didn't replay Sonic 1 enough to figure out if that one sound glitch happened again. But like I said, it could have been the system or it could have been the game. Who knows? Like, those types of things happen. And it wasn't that big of a deal. But yeah, and it fixed. It was still slow on those levels, like I remember it being, but not as slow as the times I played on the previous patch. And I played a little bit of Sonic 2, and I think I might try and play through that game maybe in the coming weeks. We'll see if I'm up to it. And I just quickly played like 20 minutes here and 20 minutes there of a bunch of other games like Contra Hardcore and Lightning Force, and I plugged in some other games that I know have really good sound and stuff like that. And I used the Sega Master System adapter and stuff like that. And,
how did that work?
It worked out really well.
Yeah?
Yeah. I played a few games on that, like Alien Syndrome and Phantasy Star, and some other action games and stuff like that, and they played nicely, just like the Sega Genesis games. And yeah, really, really solid product. Definitely
Nice.
Would recommend if you're a Sega fan. All right, so let's jump into Final Fantasy. So our first segment with Final Fantasy is our first experiences with the games. So Ian, what was your first experience with Final Fantasy?
Well, I was pretty late to the party because I know we've been over this before, but I had a Genesis.
Yep.
I know you did too, but you also had friends, and I didn't. So
Okay.
the only like RPG experiences that I had were all things that were on the Genesis.
Right. A lot of action RPGs and Phantasy Star.
Yeah, and like tactical RPGs like Shining Force, which was one of my favorites. But so I didn't really get into a Final Fantasy game until PlayStation.
Yep.
Which 7 was my first Final Fantasy.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it totally like it grabbed me. I was like so surprised in everything. I'd never played anything like that before. I mean, I'd played things similar because arguably the Phantasy Star games are kind of similar. But I mean, like just the scope of it and like visually, like it was because it was the first 3D Final Fantasy as well.
Yeah.
Which to me meant nothing because I had no other basis.
Right.
But yeah, I would play it all the time. I rented it.
Okay.
And we actually ended up like basically paying for it because I think I kept it for like a month.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like Damn. My parents were so mad that I kept it for that long. And then they I ended up getting it for like I think Christmas or my birthday or something.
Oh, okay. What attracted you to want to try the game? Was it just all the advertising, or you had a friend or something who talked about it, or you just saw it like there at the rental store?
You know what? It was a little kind of a bit of like both between like advertising as well as seeing it at the rental shop.
Right.
Because like that was one of the first games that had like a huge marketing push. You really didn't see marketing at that level. For video games prior to that. You couldn't turn on a TV.
Right.
Especially during prime time.
Yeah,
and not see a commercial for it.
It was like all over like the main like channels with the cartoons on it. Like they were talking about it on Electronic Playground. All the magazines had like articles about it and marketing. Even like not necessarily video game magazines, but PC magazine and stuff like that had it.
It was huge.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just the whole experience, I was just so captivated.
Yeah.
It really grabbed me, and it took me forever to finish because I was dealing with stuff that I didn't really handle a lot. It was really the first RPG that I sunk like
your teeth into.
like that many hours into.
Right.
I mean, I played a considerable amount of Shining Force, but Shining Force was different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wasn't. I don't think it was as deep.
Yeah, it has some of the same base RPG mechanics, but it's certainly different for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it has the exploration.
Mm-hmm.
Like Shining Force doesn't really have that.
Yeah, it's battle after battle and story in between each one.
Yeah, whereas this is just like once you get out of Midgar. I mean, even in Midgar, technically, you can kind of explore the areas around there. I remember my first playthrough. I probably took me like 10 to 15 hours just to get out of Midgar.
Wow.
Because of all the messing around I did.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was kind of my first experience with it. How about you, JC?
So my first experience with Final Fantasy was actually the first one for the Nintendo, but I didn't get it until a little bit after. I got it like January during my birthday for like '94. So I was 9, and yeah. So do the math if you want to know how old I am. Old. So my mom actually got it for me for my birthday. I had the Game Gear and the Nintendo at that point, and I was still getting new Nintendo games because they still sold them. And the game did come out in 1990 in North America, but yeah, they were still selling them, and she got it for me for my birthday because I guess the guy at the store convinced her that this might be a game that I like. And I remember I got Super Contra, like I think for that Christmas before. And then I got this for my birthday because I usually got like a bunch of Christmas presents, and then one of the things that I didn't get for Christmas I would get on my birthday because they're so close.
Yeah.
And this game, so I got it for my birthday, and I basically put every other game down. It really like captivated me. Up until this point, I never really played a game where you had to do like an overly amount of reading in the game. And it was kind of like the first game where I actually like had to like talk to NPCs to figure out what I needed to do and stuff like that. Because I played Zelda by that point, obviously, but like you didn't really have to read in Zelda.
There wasn't too much.
Yeah, and I didn't play Link's Adventure until like the mid '90s, basically. So yeah, I just found it fascinating because it had like a really like for its time or for my experience with video games, a really deep background in story, and it had like really cool job system and stuff like that. You could make your own party and whatnot, and it had like a really really long adventure. Although retroactively looking back on it, like I can beat the game between like 15 and 20 hours now because I've beaten it so many times.
But at the time, that was the games weren't really that long.
Yeah, because I didn't really know like where to level or whatnot, and where to go necessarily, because it doesn't handhold you through the whole entire game.
No,
and
it doesn't.
I just had the map and be like, oh, okay, like let's try over here or over here and stuff like that. That was my first experience with the game, and kind of like broadened my horizons into RPGs, because after I played this game, I had a 386, and I started like looking for other RPGs that I could play. So I got like Ultima 4 for the Nintendo, and The Bard's Tale for the computer, and a bunch of other like old classic RPG games. And this kind of like opened my eyes to RPGs, because it was kind of like the first RPG that I really like sat down and played, and yeah, that was my first experience with the game.
Wow.
Yeah. So a brief history of our playing of Final Fantasy in general. Ian, do you want to kind of take us through the ropes of your past with the series kind of as a whole?
Yeah, for sure. So like I said, 7 was kind of my starting point.
Mm-hmm.
So I missed all the 2D era of Final Fantasy. So 7 was my starting place, and then 8, I picked up 8, I think right when it came out. I was super excited for 8, and it hit me at like the right time. It's probably why it's my favorite.
Right.
You know, I was like, I think in middle school or just going into high school, and it was like a game about kids at school that were going to like
Better
fight
schools.
stuff, and like their school could fly, and I was just like, oh man, this is the greatest.
Yeah.
Why couldn't I go to that school?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the draw system sucks. I'm not going to go into that. But like,
that's really my only contention point with 8, is that I just dislike the draw system. But
there was so many things that I really enjoyed about it.
The characters are great. The music is great.
Oh,
the
the music's
story is
fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, like 8 for me was like the high points, and after that, like I totally missed 9.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I was a teenager. So
Oh.
teenagers do stupid things.
That kind of makes sense to me though, because like for me, 9 was like I think I talked about this in the previous episode. It was going back to square one, and basically it was formatted to work kind of like the original like 6 Final Fantasy games.
Yeah.
And having started with 7 and 8, it kind of probably looked a little bit different to you, and you know what I mean, like. I find that a lot of people who started with 7 didn't necessarily like 9 as much either, unless they had gone back and played a bunch of the games and stuff like that, and then they played 9. And
though I gotta
really
say, like
it.
going back and playing 9 currently,
Yeah,
it feels very much like 7. Like it has a very similar feel, very similar aesthetic. Cinematics are very much the same. So I mean, I get what people are saying and that it's a throwback, but at the same time, to me, it's same but different.
Yeah.
Right?
All the Final Fantasies are kind of like that up to a certain point too.
But so I missed 9, but I did pick up Anthology whenever that came out.
Cool.
And
how did you like going back to the old games?
You know what? It surprised me, but I really enjoyed 5 because I played through that first. I found it didn't take me very long, but
in comparison to 7 and 8, which like can be like 70, 80-hour games if you do everything. Like,
I mean,
5 and 6
7
are
took
like...
me like a year to finish.
Oh wow.
And like I used to take, like, if we would go away for the weekend or something, I would take my PlayStation with me, and I would always take Final Fantasy. That's the only game that I would make sure I took every single time, and that's what I would play.
Right.
Wherever I was, I would play Final Fantasy 7. And anyways, but yeah, I blew through 5, and it was cool because the job system was a lot of fun. I didn't really have anything like that previously, but story-wise, I thought 6 was a lot stronger. The characters were just a lot more interesting, and I really enjoyed it. I emulated 4. I did buy Chronicles, Final Fantasy Chronicles, which came with 4 and Chrono Trigger, which the worst port of Chrono Trigger. Side note.
Oh, okay.
Horrible port. It runs like garbage.
Does it?
Yeah,
okay.
It's very slow. It's very slow and choppy.
Oh, okay. I really enjoyed it because of the extra stuff that they added in, like the anime cutscenes and stuff.
If you're gonna play it on the DS.
All right.
The Chronicles. Bleh. But 4 was a lot of fun. It reminds me of 5, to me, with a slightly better story.
Right.
I didn't go like way back. I did pick up 1 when it came out on the Game Boy Advance.
Oh, okay. Did you ever play through 1?
I never finished it, no.
Oh, okay.
But I played through. Like I started playing through it. Actually, Jen is a big fan of 1. I think she finished it.
Cool. Yeah, Final Fantasy 1 on the GBA, the Souls edition, which came with 1 and 2. That used to be one of my college games. I would basically like beat that game a week, just playing over and over and just trying different parties and stuff like that. That's whenever I like tried to learn like which combination of characters is the hardest.
Yeah.
I think 4 Thieves is the answer. That or White Mages. Those are difficult playthroughs, but yeah.
But I mean, it was still fun, and it was nice to experience the older games.
I really enjoyed how the PlayStation era, they actually like reskinned them. They're actually kind of like the Wonder Swan, which is a Japanese handheld console.
Yeah.
By Bandai. That reskin ported over, I believe. If it's not, it definitely it definitely looks like it reuses some assets from there. But I really liked how they did that, because a lot of my friends in high school who like really liked role-playing games, they also hadn't played a lot of the older Nintendo and Super Nintendo Final Fantasies, and it was cool to be able to have everybody like replay those games and stuff like that, because even then it was sort of hard to find copies of 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and the anthology package was great because it came with a soundtrack too, and there's like a lot of great music on there.
Yeah, because one of them came with a music CD.
Yeah, Anthology had the soundtracks for 5 and 6.
Yeah, that was its bonus.
Yeah, it was really cool. But then I probably played about half of 10. I had some issues with the we rented it, like a group of us had rented it, and I wasn't paying attention when it went over the sphere grid stuff. So
That's important.
Yeah. So I missed out on that. So even though when my friends were playing, they were updating it. When everybody left and I was playing it by myself, I wasn't doing anything to the sphere grid.
Oh, okay.
So I went through levels and levels without doing anything.
Wow.
So,
yeah, I would say you probably made the game a little bit more difficult than it needed to be.
yeah. It wasn't until about I think around the midway point when I'm like, man, this is just so hard. Why is this so hard?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I realized that there was a whole system that I wasn't even using.
Yeah.
And at that point, I fell off. Though I will say Blitzball was amazing.
Yeah.
I played so much Blitzball.
Yeah.
That's
I played...
going back. They re-released it on the Vita and the PS3 and PS4. But yeah, at the time it was on the Vita and PS3.
And it's I think that edition's even on the Switch now.
I think it is too.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
But I picked it up on the Vita because I'm like, handheld, this is going to be awesome. And mostly what I've done with it is just play Blitzball.
Yeah.
Because Blitzball is dope. But yeah, I dabbled in the online ones. I put probably close to 150 hours into Tactics Advance on the Game Boy Advance.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, it's always been something that's stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
When a new one comes out, I will always pick it up. I will try it out. Like mainline entries.
Yeah.
The fringe entries, kind of if it piques my interest.
Right.
I think the last one I picked up, other than that wasn't a mainline, would have been Explorers, which was on the 3DS.
Oh, okay, yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of Monster Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Just not as good.
Fair enough.
But the multiplayer aspects were kind of cool, and that was neat. But yeah, it's a series that I've always enjoyed. So
cool.
JC, give me a little bit of your history with it.
So as I said, I started with the first one, and I basically played 1 to 10, and then kind of lost my love for the series after that. So I consider myself more of a classic Final Fantasy fan.
Okay.
More than a modern Final Fantasy fan. So yeah, I didn't play the Super Nintendo ones that much. I kind of went back to them as well. Whenever the remasters came out for the PlayStation, that's whenever I actually played through them. But because I didn't have the Super Nintendo, and my friend only had Final Fantasy 2, and he didn't have Final Fantasy 3, but I believe we got a hold of it for a while off of a friend or something, or his cousin or something, but we never really played through it.
Yeah.
So I emulated Final Fantasy, like the Japanese versions with fan translations for the Nintendo, Final Fantasy 2 and 3. So I had played through those in middle school, early high school. I was really excited whenever they were re-releasing Origins, which was Final Fantasy 1 and 2. I was super disappointed they didn't do 3, but they eventually did that for the DS. But it wasn't the original one. I kind of wanted to play through the originals, but I had played through them anyway. But so I basically learned about emulation because of those games, because I found out there's a bunch of cool RPGs and stuff like that. I guess it's kind of a slight side tangent, but it is slightly related, that there are these fan translations of these Japanese games that we never got, and that was kind of my foray into that. And I thought that was really cool. But yeah, and I played 7 to 9, and I really, really enjoyed those. 7 probably has the most impact on me. I do really, really like 8, minus the draw system. I have a huge contention point, which we've had outside discussions about. I think
just this evening.
Yeah, I honestly think if you were to get rid of, I like the idea of the mechanics that you can use off the draw system. For example, how to make yourself immune and heal off of certain elemental effects and become bonus and stuff like that. All that I like. Just the physical fact of just healing yourself and then drawing, healing yourself and drawing, and spending hours doing that is effectively a waste of time. I remember in Final Fantasy VIII, I had a huge argument with my friend. Because I used to get the strategy guides for every RPG that I basically would play, the main Final Fantasies and stuff, and because I liked collecting them. I saw in the bestiary there is ranged brackets for the monsters and the bosses. So basically everything was leveling up for you. And that was the first time that the Final Fantasy series ever really did that. If you basically power leveled your way through a certain section and got to a higher level, you weren't rewarded for it. By
No.
being able to make the game easier, it basically just said, okay, we'll scale. That's a okay idea in theory, and there's pros and cons to it. I don't really care about the pros and cons, but what's funny about this is I actually had an argument with my friend. I'm like, I bet you can beat this game at the lowest possible level. So I did some like rough estimations and stuff like that. I'm like, I bet you I can probably beat it around level 30. So my characters were between like level 30 and 34, and I actually beat that game. I have no idea how. I basically had to
Spite. Purely spite.
It was pure. It was definitely pure spite. But like I had to. I remember fighting the last boss in that game, and I had to basically have the party come in a certain order, or else I have to reset the game. So I needed to Selphie to kamikaze and then one shot the first form, and they had to come in, and if a certain character replaced Selphie and it wasn't one of the characters that I had basically leveled, then I had to restart the game because I would lose attacks.
Yeah.
And so I basically came out to a system, and it wasn't 100% consistent, but I beat the game like 4 or 5 times, showing people that it was possible, just because it was like, no, like guys, like this is dumb, right? And I wouldn't sit at there was only a couple points in the game where I actually sat there and drew certain magic, because I realized that I needed like at least 30 or 40 of them. I don't think I got more than 50 of any magic. If I did, it was because it was natural, just through osmosis of like clicking on the little entry points that you found,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But yeah, I always found that kind of interesting because I really liked that game. The music is probably some of the best music in my opinion.
Yep.
The storyline was really, really cool.
Triple Triad's a lot of fun.
Yeah, Triple Triad.
It's no blitzball.
I actually like Triple Triad more than Final Fantasies and Final Fantasy 11s. The original core Final Fantasy 8 version of the card game is the one that I liked the most.
Yeah,
Well, it got more
because 11
complicating.
was Tetramaster.
Yeah, it got more. It was the same thing, but it got more complicating, and I just didn't really like it as much.
No, Triple Triad was great. It was a
Yeah.
easy enough system to get your hands on, and
Yeah. Playing through 8 was a lot of fun, but I actually got the PlayStation 2 and like on launch Christmas, and Final Fantasy 9 came out at the same time. It was kind of funny because my mom always thought it was like, we got you a new system. Why aren't you playing Eternal Ring? And which is the game I got. And you're just playing Final Fantasy like 9, a PlayStation game. And I'm like, okay, but I'm playing on the new PlayStation. Like, leave me alone, Mom.
yeah,
And she always thought it was kind of funny, interesting that I was still playing PlayStation 1 game anyway. And I beat that game so fast, like within the 25th and the New Year's, basically. And I had to go to like family gatherings and stuff like that in between it. And there's a special item you can get if you get to like disc 3 or disc 4 within a certain amount of time. My friend had told me this because I wasn't reading the strategy guide for 9 because it was bullshit because half of it was online. And yeah, it was like you had to use the play online thing in order to get half the facts and be like, reference the play online. It was really stupid. They didn't do it after that. But he told me, the most powerful weapon can, he knew I was power playing through it. It's like the most powerful weapon you get if you get to a certain point by X amount of hours. I think it was off by like 2 or 3 hours. I was like, oh no. But then I kept on playing through it. But I remember I have fond memories of 9, but I really should replay it because I beat it so fast and probably because I was sleep deprived, I don't remember it that well.
Yeah.
I remember the main plot points and stuff like that, but like the little intricacies of the story and stuff like that, like 7 and 8, I don't remember 9 that well. So that was my experience with 9. And I have one other interesting story about my playthroughs of a bunch of the Final Fantasies with 10. So I haven't beat 10, and I probably should have. And in my opinion, if I would have beaten 10, I probably would have thought 10 was better than 7. Because at the time, I was like, like 7 and Tactics are the best Final Fantasy ever. Because those are like my benchmark best ones that I would compare all the other ones to.
okay.
Just because I really, really like the materia system, and I really, really like the job system. And if they combine those together, I will buy the game. So with 10, I got to the very end, and myself and 2 or 3 other friends were playing the game at the same time. and I had almost gotten to the end boss in the end of the game, but we ended up having to go away for the weekend, so I didn't have any time to play the game. So whenever I got back, I tried to play through it, but then I ran out of time. I came back on Monday morning back to school, and my one friend had beaten the game, and he was like, "Oh my god, like the end is so like amazing, like this happened and that happened." I'm like, "Dude, I haven't beaten it," and he just wasn't listening to me, and he kept on going and going. I'm like, "Oh, I really liked how that happened, and like this was so emotional and stuff like that." I'm like, "What, dude? I haven't beaten it," and he's like, "What? How didn't you beat it? Like you were like 10 hours ahead of me, and you had all weekend." I'm like, "I tried to tell you," and then like my other friend was like, "Yeah, he was trying to stop you." And also I haven't beaten it either. And so I actually I never beat it. I just from that point forward I have not played Final Fantasy X.
Wow.
Because I was just like, okay. I did whenever like YouTube became more of a thing, like in college and stuff like that. This happened in high school. A few years later, I went and I actually viewed the Final Fantasy X ending, and I was like, "Holy crap! Like that is an amazing ending to a game. It like wraps everything up really, really nicely. It doesn't necessarily end the way that I want it to, but like those types of movies and stories and stuff like that, for me, like always have like a really good impact because I love those types of stories and stuff like that. Like Blade
Yeah.
Runner has an ambiguous end to it. I really like that movie. So same with like Lost in Translation.
Yeah, not everything needs a happy ending.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. For some people, yes, but like for me, I love those types of stories, and this kind of it closed up and it kind of had some like of that element to it, so it probably would have made me like it a lot more. But yeah, I legit just like took out the disc, put it in the box, and then put it back, and yeah, I went on to play other games because I'm like, well, now I know what happens because it was like that was the whole point of trying to beat the game. But yeah, it was an interesting story. But last interesting story of my kind of history with it was I never actually owned Tactics. I've never personally beaten it myself because I've seen two people beat it, and we kind of like played the game together, and we like oh, I do this battle or that battle, or like like you can decide what happens with these three characters, and I'll decide what happens with these two characters and stuff like that. So I
Okay.
played the game together with a friend, and through that I've beaten it like 2 times. With the original PlayStation version, I beaten the PSP version, but my friend made some interesting life choices. Was dating some girl, and she didn't like video games, and he needed to spend all of his time on her. And just some of you probably know where the story is going. And he had to get rid of all of his video games, minus like two or three of them. And he was like
Nope.
telling me this. I'm like, okay, well, give me Tactics because like you're not throwing that game out. And he's like, but I thought that was one of the games that I wanted to keep. I'm like, okay, sure, but you understand she's gonna make you get rid of like all of your games. And I don't remember if she did or didn't, but I seem to remember that like anyway, most of his games he sold off. But I played my friend best two of three Magic the Gathering.
Whoa, nerd.
Yeah, I know. It was my green deck versus I think his black deck, and we did best two of three, and I managed to beat him surprisingly. I'm pretty sure his deck was better, to be honest with you, but I just got the cards that I needed.
Out of the cards, baby.
Yeah, heart of the cards, and yeah, so I won that game, and then I gave him like 20 or $30 for it, but
That's not a bad deal.
yeah, so that's how I got Tactics.
Everybody knows my tactics story.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how we both have like Final Fantasy Tactics stories.
Yeah, that's. Does anyone else have a tactics story? I wanna
Yeah,
hear
let
that.
us know. Maybe it's a Tactics thing, right?
Yeah, it's.
Yeah,
And I've never beaten either of them.
right.
Like I haven't. I think I've played a little bit of the PlayStation One version.
Yeah, I really liked the remaster and the added content from Final Fantasy Tactics.
Was War of the Lions?
War of the Lions.
That was
yeah.
on the PSP. I've played a little bit of it, but
Yeah.
not a ton. But Tactics Advance, I just slammed the hell out of.
Yeah, I played quite a bit of that game too, but I didn't play it as much. Yeah. So yeah, after that era of like 10, and then 10.2 came out, and I played a little bit of that, but I never actually sat through and finished it. But I did like some of the mechanics of it, and stuff. I kind of like lost my love with Square. The movie came out, which I surprisingly enjoyed. I'm probably like the only one. But
No, man, you know what? I enjoyed it too. I watched it when it came out, and I had a good time.
I I bought the book before the movie came out, and I read it, and it actually has some interesting things that happen in the book that aren't in the movie, which I found interesting. Because it was based off of like the screenwriting notes apparently.
Okay.
And I saw it like 5 times in the theater. But
Wow.
I really enjoyed it. Oh, I liked like actually figuring out and pointing out like certain like you watched 50 things you missed in the movie and stuff like that. Well, I went and watched the movie a bunch of times and was like, oh cool, that's the thing from this and stuff like that. And there's Chocobo on the briefcase and all this other stuff and whatnot. And yeah,
5 times though.
I
Theatrically.
I think I've only seen Lord of the Rings more. Yeah.
Theatrically?
Yeah, theatrically. I saw Fellowship of the Ring 6 times, Two Towers 5, and Return of the King 3 times in the theater.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw Phantom Menace I think 15 times
Yikes.
in the theater. I was young, and it was my first theatrical Star Wars.
Oh, was it? Well, yeah, it was my first theatrical Star Wars as well, obviously, but yeah. Anyway,
but still 5 times. Anyways, so yeah, the movie was decent, and it did so poorly.
Yeah, that they actually basically changed the company from this. From what I understand, this is speculation on my part. I think the merger between Square and Enix was supposed to happen prior to the actual bombing of the movie because they spent so much money on it, and then they were reluctant on actually doing it afterwards. But the merger did end up happening after the movie. They got rid of Hironobu Sakaguchi, and his like directorial influence on a bunch of the games basically didn't exist anymore. And the way that Final Fantasy kind of like pivoted after that kind of alienated me a little bit because I was very used to getting like new iterations of a new thing, regardless if I liked the magic system or not, or I liked the story or not in comparison to another game, because it has its ups and downs in my opinion. They basically went off to basically major pop culture style, in my opinion, and re-releases, sequels, prequels, and sidequels. And that's kind of where the company kind of moved to for Final Fantasy. And they got rid of a bunch of their innovation, where the company itself was like making games such as Vagrant Story and Bushido Blade and a bunch of the Mana games in the PlayStation 1 and 2 era. And sure, these aren't Final Fantasy, but it is a company that makes them. And they had a lot of like side things where like I felt like a lot of those games kind of went towards the handheld stuff, and any of the core console stuff that was released was more of this, because like you have like 3 versions of 13 and like 2 versions of 10 and all this other stuff that happened consistently over time with after the merger. Like 10 is the last Squaresoft game, right?
Yeah.
And 10-2 is Square Enix. And like to my point, like Ivlance was like popular. Like there's a lot of like niche fans of tactics in the world of Ivlance, and 12 takes place in Ivlance. And then,
But I mean, Tactics Advanced did as well. Like
I know that's
it's still like a, and then it is a place that they've revisited several times, and it's not necessarily a bad.
It's not a bad thing. And
plus,
I
do think that they've still managed to innovate sometimes. The battle system in 12 was quite different from anything else that they'd done at that point.
Yeah, that's
and
what
to
I've
some
heard.
people, it's their like one of their favorite systems. Period.
Yeah, I know that there's like a large camp of people who think that 12 is the best, and unfortunately, like I don't even think I owned 12 whenever it first came out. I went back and bought it whenever it was worth like $10 or something. Like now I just retroactively buy the Final Fantasy games and I play some of them, versus like before I was always like on top of it.
I feel like now, especially with the release of the Zodiac Age on the Switch, it might be a great time for you to grab that and just actually dive in and give it a chance. I know that getting, between the merger and with different directors driving that, it is going to be different. I mean, it's similar to Konami getting rid of Hideo Kojima, right? Like you have,
for sure.
You have like an auteur who's doing just amazing stuff.
Yeah,
And then you're trying to fill that void.
Yeah, for sure.
But I still think Square Enix is still making decent content. Yes, it's a lot. They are pushing some stuff that is meh. Like a lot of their stuff is around the meh level.
Yeah.
But
I still think
Final
that
Fantasy games I think are suffering a little bit.
Yeah, I still think that they're releasing like solid quality content. It's just like for me, especially like after like that transition, it's just like I really liked and look forward to those things that they used to do,
Yeah.
and they no longer kind of do them. And like I still play some of the Final Fantasies and stuff like that, certainly. But it's just a big change, and that's why I consider myself more of a classic Final Fantasy fan over a modern Final Fantasy fan. Because like I own 15, I've never played it. I played half of 13. I got tired of it.
I mean, 13 I couldn't get behind because of the corridors. I mean, everyone tells me that it opens up after about 20 hours.
Oh, I played it for like 30 hours and it didn't open up.
Yeah, I don't want to wait that long to get into my Final Fantasy. 15 did for me because it opens up fairly early.
Yeah,
like you feel free, and you're out roaming around with your friends. And plus like we were discussing earlier, I'm not sure if we mentioned it last week, but when we were talking about Final Fantasy VII remake.
Yeah, the remake.
With them actually putting out a prequel film, which handles all of the world building.
Yeah, for 15.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that they should do for 7 to try and keep the game more action oriented.
Yeah,
and that's another thing. I find that the Final Fantasy games became more of an action-oriented RPG style rather than its traditional like combat styles. It's still action-oriented per se, but and yeah, like there's still some pausing and turn or ATB style stuff that's still there, but it's definitely a lot more action-oriented than it used to be.
It is for sure, and it's. To me, that seems like a natural evolution of the series.
Yeah,
because it's very rare that you find a like AAA release that is a turn-based RPG at this point. You have very few series that are going to be delivering a turn-based RPG at $80.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And
especially since like the mass majority of people, as more people are playing video games, don't necessarily like that. So.
And it's not a knock against the turn-based system, at all whatsoever. I do enjoy it. The Dragon Quest games are still great, and they are still very much a turn-based series. But I find that like 15 is much more cinematic. It has a much more natural flow. Yeah, and everything. And
that's kind of like what I meant before by saying. The games are more of like they fall like I use the word pop culture with like its style and stuff like that. That's kind of what I mean by that. It's it's become more cinematic ever since 7 and sure like 4 and 6 definitely had their very cinematic moments and stuff like that.
Yeah,
too.
I mean for the time, like 6 blew my mind because I played that so much later, and then to get this like. These big set piece moments on like 16-bit hardware. Yeah. I was so impressed with it at the time to be like, wow, this is like you're delivering like emotion.
Yeah, I feel that like 4, 5, and 6 definitely all have their very good story building and character building, especially character building moments that like what I think they should do with Final Fantasy is like kind of like remake those games sort of like they did with Final Fantasy the Dragon Quest games 3, 4, and 5. They made them 3D.
Yes.
If they use kind of like graphics like that or Bravely Default, for example, and then they remade 4, 5, and 6, I think that would be amazing, and they probably do very, very well. And I would definitely play those games because it would be nice to play through them again.
I would for sure jump back into 6 again if I was playing. You know what? I mean, I would jump back into 6 again anyways.
Yeah.
But seeing a redone version of it, yeah, absolutely. That would be just outstanding. Give me that. Don't give me an HD remaster of Last Remnant.
Yeah. I found that weird as well. Yeah. So let's move into our high points in the series. Ian, so you said 8 is your favorite one?
8 is my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for me. That was the kind of high point.
Cool.
I know the draw. We've been over this. The draw system sucks, but the story was just so good, and just so, I guess, relevant for me at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I was in some like military academy or anything, but it just
But you could have been.
I could have been, but no, like it was just it was an interesting group of people, you know. I could easily identify with the main character because I didn't have friends.
Right.
So, you know, it was easy to identify with somebody who just kind of wanted to be left alone. And the game, I enjoyed the gameplay. I enjoyed the active, like slightly more active combat.
Yeah.
You know, being able to pull the trigger for the gunblade. There was a lot,
and also with the summons, you could press square up rapidly, and then you do more damage.
And the GFs feeling a little bit more like pets almost,
right?
Or like Pokemon.
Yeah, it was kind of neat how they took the element from Knights of the Round from 7, where you had to beat the Knights of the Round, and move that over to 8, which is how I liked how Final Fantasy always innovates off of their own ideas, and then they kind of move that to all of this. The summons, and you basically had to beat them in order to have them work for you.
Yeah, no, and it was just everything I loved everything about it. All of the story moments. To me, that game doesn't fall off. There's no lull.
Yeah.
I couldn't be more excited. Even watching all of the other stuff that Square was talking about this year at E3, even the pile of information on the Final Fantasy VII remake, when I knew that there was an HD remaster coming out for Final Fantasy VIII, I was pumped. What about you, JC? High point?
I would say either Final Fantasy V or Final Fantasy VII. 7 had a really big impact on me because it caused me to buy a system.
Well, yeah.
As I went over before, I was on the Saturn band camp, and I didn't really consider N64. And then I was like, okay, well, sure, there's games like Albert Odyssey on the Saturn, but Final Fantasy VII is coming out, so I'm getting a PlayStation, and it sold me a console, and then kind of kept on selling me consoles up until the 360 PS3 era, where it was just like, I need to play Dragon Age. But so 7 definitely, and I would say 5, just because I feel that if 5 actually did come out in North America, that more people would like 5. People kind of had already played 6 and generally reference 6 as like the best Final Fantasy. And although I am inclined to agree that it is one of the top Final Fantasies, I do think there is some merit for saying that 5 is actually really, really good as well. It's got the job system, which I really enjoy. The character interactions are just as good as like 4, almost as good as 6, and I really enjoyed it. So I think that just the retrospective look at the game after the fact kind of tainted people's opinions of the game, because we didn't really get that many of the Final Fantasies early. We were missing like half of them.
That's true. And by the time it came out, we already had a fairly advanced and robust job system in Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yeah, and it wasn't as good as Tactics. And my one friend who liked Tactics the most complained about 5 because it wasn't as good of a job system as Tactics. I was trying to look at it through basically as a period piece of like, well, if this came out at the time and I had played it in the mid '90s, then I would have liked Tactics more because then I would have seen the evolution of the job system.
Yeah,
and stuff
you
like
would have
that.
already had a taste for it.
Yeah, because they kind of took like the existing job classes from all the Final Fantasies up until that point, and then kind of made it so you can make a choice and stuff like that. Which is like always really really cool. And I really like the characters and the story of going down the level of like to the different world and stuff like that. I thought that was really really cool with the airship and stuff. And then boss was pretty cool too. He wasn't as like maybe memorable as Kefka, but
Yeah, Kefka was huge. He had a huge personality, and he really stands out. This was literally the argument that we had prior to this when JC said 5 was the best 2D era.
I honestly do think that. And like, another point too.
I couldn't tell you the name of the final boss I guess I should say the main villain in 5. Whereas I immediately Kefka, because he was a huge personality.
Yeah, but I found 5 to be more difficult as well, which also
See, I found the opposite. I found
Really?
it less
okay.
challenging to me.
Yeah, maybe that's because I was like playing random classes, because in those types of games I tend to like make mage heavy parties, which kind of screws me over, but it adds a element of
Balance.
challenge to it. Yeah, I don't necessarily believe in balanced parties. But anyway, so yeah, those are my high points in the series. What about a low point in the series for you, Ian?
It was probably 13.
Okay.
If I'm being totally honest. Yeah, I
Yeah.
picked it up right when it came out. I'd watched a bunch of stuff leading up to it. I threw it in day one, and I don't know, the combat system was okay. Just controlling one character was it was all right. I mean, it's a little less thinking
Yeah.
because you can just kind of focus on the one.
Yeah, you
And that's
swap
fine.
back and forth between the characters, though.
Yeah, but you can kind of just focus on the one.
Yeah.
But then as soon as things started moving, and I realized it was just a series of hallways,
Yeah.
it just fell flat for me, and I shelved it. I know my wife picked it up, played it for, I think she played it for 20 or so hours.
Okay.
She put some time into it, but even then, she put it down too. Like it just,
Yeah.
she lost interest. I mean, I picked up its sequel, and I think it's sequel, but I haven't played any of them. I think it was more so just oh, cool.
Yeah, to complete the collection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about for you?
I have very similar sentiments with 13. I waited like the PlayStation 4 was already out by the time I played 13, because I was waiting to get the game, because I was like, okay, well, I'll rather play it on the PlayStation, because from what I understood, the graphics look a little bit better with like the Blu-ray
Yeah.
textures and stuff like that. So I really didn't like that game. I played it for maybe 30 hours and made it to a boss, which people have told me has like 500,000 hit points. And I wasn't losing, but I was getting bored of just defending, attacking, switch, defend, attack, switch, defend, attack, and then like doing barely any damage and them doing barely any damage to me, that I just got bored of it. I'm just like, you want to know what? I've been fighting this boss for like umpteen minutes. Put the controller down, walk away, and I haven't played it since.
Yeah.
And which is really unfortunate, because I was really enjoying the main character, and some of the other characters, some of them I really disliked. I wanted to know where the story was going. I really enjoyed the cinematic feel that it had. The music was really, really up there in terms of Final Fantasy music, and there's a lot of good things going for it.
Yeah, the production
but-
value was there
yeah.
for sure, but
But only whenever they were storytelling. The production value was missing whenever it was just like, oh, the hallway goes straight, and then you do a U-turn, and then it goes straight, and then you do straight, and then you go straight, and then you go straight, and it's like, well, wait, what? Oh, boss. Okay, cool. Something interesting. But 10 was linear, and 10 didn't have that feeling, right?
no, it didn't feel like you were running down a series of hallways.
Yeah, but you were, and you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But but that's why I'm saying this, is because it's generally not a problem. But like, it was super obvious, and that game was delayed. So it's like, why was that game delayed? Like, I remember it was supposed to be coming out earlier in the PlayStation 3 cycle,
That's
like
right.
almost near launch, and it came out a few years later, and it just, what were they working on?
More
Like,
hallways.
more hallways? Okay, sure. I guess I needed more hallways, but yeah, that was a huge low point, and it kind of like reaffirmed that like to me, unfortunately, it reaffirmed to me that like, yeah, ever since Hironobu Sakaguchi left, Final Fan, like, what the hell are they doing with the series that I used to love? Like, what the fuck? I just didn't understand, and it's like, okay, because I haven't played 12. I played apparently halfway through 13. Um, yeah, I haven't played 15. I buy them whenever they're like $10. But anyway, I don't want to get like too salty, but that's my low point in the series.
That's quite a low point.
Was definitely 13, and the former director um, essentially politely being asked to leave. Yeah, but let's move on. We both played Tactics and Tactics Advanced quite a bit. Myself Tactics and yourself Tactics Advanced more so. Let's go into that. So as I mentioned, I played Final Fantasy Tactics, and I've beaten it a couple of times with friends, which
Yeah.
I thought was really cool because it had like the whole entire grid-based combat and the job system, and the story was just so amazing. Like I could at the time, especially, like, it felt like it was an epic, right? Like, it just had so much more impact of the characters growing and the characters actually having a huge backstory and stuff like that. Where like 7, Cloud had a backstory, and it was really interesting and stuff like that with Cloud and Tifa. But in comparison to Ramza, Cloud does not have a backstory. Neither does Squall. Like, Ramza's backstory is like so much more, in my opinion, interesting. That's why that game really captivated me, because it was about a whole bunch of people who used to know each other. And yeah, this is a very classic trope of Final Fantasy, and Squall and Cloud fall underneath the same umbrella because it just does the same thing. But just how they told that story between like the nobles and the commoners, and like the different elements of the class structures and stuff like that, and how there's the economic, and not economic, but the political turmoil that's going on in the land of Ivlance and stuff like that. It made the whole entire world seem like real, like history from a medieval period and stuff like that. To me, the game captivated me. In it was just combat wise so interesting because I could choose to play the game any way that I wanted.
Yeah.
I still needed a tank and a healer and stuff like that, and your classic classes and stuff. But like, you could add in like your fourth and fifth characters, because generally you get like 5 characters usually on the battle map. Could be something extra where you could have like a summoner blue mage or something like that, and then have that extra little element and play the game totally differently than maybe you would play the game. And then we would be able to like have conversations, like I used to at lunch and stuff like that with my friends who had also played the game, and be like, oh, like, I beat the game, the one boss by doing this and stuff like that. And you would like learn new tricks and of the trade from figuring out like, oh, like JC plays this way and Ian plays like that way, and you collaborate and figure out like new things and stuff, because like we had game facts and strategy guides at that point, right? Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, and I just always really had a high regard for Final Fantasy Tactics, and yeah, it was just a really really fun game in my opinion.
See, it's funny because I had a very different experience with Tactics Advanced.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love the story, but again, it's a lost kid.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the best tutorials in any game I've played.
Snowball fight.
Yeah, snowball fight to teach you the mechanics.
Yeah.
Which was so much fun, and it gives you a perfect feel for what you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you're just a kid transported to this other place.
Yeah.
And
Which
you
is
want
a
to get
very great fantasy trope because like
yeah. I mean, obviously that's their thing. They're just going to keep telling stories that have already been told, but in their own way. But yeah, you know, and you're making the map as you go. You get bonuses for putting stuff in the right place, and you know, but you can put it wherever you want.
yeah,
There's no penalty necessarily to putting something in the wrong place. You just don't get a bonus.
right.
And then you have all kinds of like bounties and the job system, which I loved because you don't know. Like, it was neat finding out what combinations of things would then breed into something else. It's like, okay, well, I've upgraded this and this, or I've leveled up this and this. Now what can I be?
Yeah.
You know, okay, well, I need more levels in this to become like this class.
Right.
You know, like maybe I've got an archer, but I want to be a ranger. And then being able to essentially have cross class abilities.
Yeah.
So even though I might have a ranger, I could still have some like black mage spells.
Yep.
So, and the parties were bigger than 5. I think you usually had 6, maybe 7 sometimes, depending.
Yeah, there in tactics there are some cases where you would get more of them, but even sometimes you'd only get 3 characters in tactics, but it was depending on the story and what was going on. Yeah.
Plus, I didn't play tactics really.
They're very similar games, but
Did it have the judge system in it?
where
Where you would have rules that you would have to abide by?
no.
So
that was one of the enhancements, so to speak, that you had to follow.
that was really cool.
Yeah.
It was super, super cool. And then what was even better was the times where you go to the lawless areas. And yes, there was no rules, but death was permanent as well.
That's the other thing that I really liked about tactics too, because they would turn into crystals and you had 3 rounds to get them back. Otherwise, you'd lose your character for good.
Whereas in Tactics Advance, it was if you fight in these lawless areas, if your character goes down, they are dead.
They're gone. Yeah.
That was stressful.
To parallel, there is I think one area in tactics where like something doesn't work. So wow, I don't fully remember, but I'm pretty sure there was an area where magic didn't work or something like that, or you couldn't. Yeah, but regardless,
and it told a story, and it was mostly told through like out of combat sections.
Yeah.
So, you'd have your combat and then you'd go to a town or something.
Yep.
And then you would get, your little piece of story. So I mean it for me, Tactics Advance was a bit of a game changer because it was something that had a ton of depth that was in my hands.
Yeah.
I could take it anywhere. For me, it was the thing that I would play at night before I'd go to bed. I'd play, I'll find a bounty. I'll do a bounty or a hunt, or I can't remember what they called them. But I would do one of those and then save it, shut it down, go to bed. Or, I got to go to the bathroom. Sweet, I'm taking my Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
And that was a big shift. Oh, I'm going to a movie. All right, Game Boy Advance. You could throw it in your back pocket. Like it was just a perfect size. It took a huge world and let me take it wherever I want to go.
Yeah, that's why I liked whenever they re-released the War of the Lions for the PSP, and because I was able to play it portably at college. Yeah.
But I mean, even I'm going to argue a little bit. The PSP was much harder to just pocket.
Yeah, I always kept it in my coat pocket, in the inside pocket.
Yeah, because it was a good size. Whereas, like, if I was just going in a t-shirt and shorts, my Game Boy Advance was still going in my back pocket. There was always space for your Game Boy Advance. Even girls' pants could hold a Game Boy Advance.
All right, maybe the SP version.
Well, yeah.
I didn't have an SP. I had the normal.
You animal.
I mean, most of the stuff that I played for the Game Boy Advance was on the Game Boy Advance player, but
that's fair. But so that's kind of our experiences, which again, sort of flipped this time because
Yeah.
typically it's you that has the handheld
Yeah,
experience,
a
whereas
lot of
I was
the.
playing on the home console.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Okay, so let's move on to the online Final Fantasies.
yeah, because there was two.
Yep, there was. You've played 2 of them, but I've only played 11.
I've played both of them. I I've played both of them on
The consoles.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I did play both of them on console. I did also play 14 on PC, but you only played 11 on PC.
Yeah, so being born in January with the way that the school system works, I was usually the oldest in the class, and a lot of our friends' parents wouldn't let us use the like our moms wouldn't let us use our credit cards
I
for
can't
online
imagine
things.
why they wouldn't let teenage
Yeah.
boys use their credit cards for online purchases.
So I got a credit card first, and Final Fantasy 11 came out like shortly after, if I recall correctly, and so I got 11 for the PC, and it was the first MMO that I ever really played.
Now, what drew you to the PC version as opposed to the PlayStation 2 version?
So a couple things. I had a PC that could run it,
Okay.
so that was a big thing about it.
Yeah.
And also, I kind of understood that it would basically work better on the PC versus the PlayStation. Because I didn't really want to have to get like a keyboard that would be like or a dongle or to get the keyboard to work through USB and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the graphics from what I was seeing kind of looked a little bit better on the PC as well. And yeah, so I knew that you could play cross platform, which I thought was really cool, and cross country too, because whenever I was playing was really late at night and a lot of people in Japan were on. So because I played from like midnight to like 3 a.m. most of the time.
Okay.
Yeah, but so that's the main reason why I played it on the PC, just because I understood it to be the better version. But yeah, I pre-ordered the copy, got a neat mouse pad for the computer, which I still have somewhere kicking around. I never really used it because the glossiness of it didn't. I had the Microsoft optical mouse, and it wouldn't like work on the mouse pad, so I've never used it. But yeah, so I got that, and the game took forever. So I had a 56K baud modem at the time. Where I grew up, it wasn't. It was kind of in a
Middle of nowhere?
Yeah, it was in the middle of nowhere. It was a small town, so I didn't live in the major cities at that point, and we didn't have like 128 DSL was just being available in the cities and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I had DSL at that point.
Oh,
Actually,
okay.
I think I had cable.
Oh, okay.
But
And yeah, so I had like slow internet, and it took probably 15 hours to download the entire game. I remember getting the game, getting home, installing it, and like I played Warcraft online and Age of Empires online, so my mom and her husband were accustomed to me being like, don't pick up the phone, but sometimes there'd be mistakes. So I was like, okay, I unplugged all the phones, don't plug them back in. I am downloading the game, and then like I was like a big like prep for them, and I'm like, don't use the phones. They were always cool with it because like every time people would try and like contact them, just be busy because I'd be on the internet. But yeah, and so I installed the game and then downloaded it, and it took for freaking ever. I think it stopped downloading because I would like wake up and check it to make sure it didn't disconnect, because if it did, I'd have to start all over again from scratch.
Yeah.
So I think it's stopped downloading at like 6 a.m. in the morning, and I was like sleeping on and off. And then I was like, okay, cool. And I got into the game. I plugged in my name, made my character, because I'd already decided what class and character I was going to be. It was Elf Red Mage. And I made my character. I logged in. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And I needed to catch the bus for like 7:10, 7:15. So I just like ran out the door and went to school. And then like told everybody about my experience. I was like, oh my God, it was amazing. I like played like maybe 50 seconds of it. Like, I don't even know if I logged out. I just left my character there and I just like walked away.
Oh man, your parents' phone.
Yeah.
So what was your experience with like the gameplay?
Yeah, It was a lot different than your traditional RPG.
Yeah.
And it was definitely an eye opener. So I didn't really know anybody playing the game. I was literally the only person who could play the game because I had access to a credit card. And the rest of my friends, I think the one or two of them that did play it played it like a year or so afterwards.
Yeah.
And I played a lot of it solo. And for anybody who's played that game like early in the first couple of years, like that's not a great way to play the game.
No.
But like I said, I never played it MMOs before, and a lot of the time whenever I was playing, like unless you were in like Pacific time, you weren't on the game. And I played it like during the week and stuff like that, and not generally on weekends. I'd play the console games on weekends, so like there wasn't a lot of English people like playing. There wasn't a lot of people playing during the hours I was playing, so I just like solo up and try and I'm pretty sure I went the first secondary class that I chose was white mage just so I could survive.
Yeah.
And every now and then I would get like invites from people, and then they would just be Japanese, and I'd see the text and like some of the words would like be in the parentheses. And I'd be like English, no Japanese, and then it'd be like, okay, like whatever, they'd use gestures and we'd learn to play with each other. And I had a couple people in my link shell that were from Japan that I would play with constantly.
That's pretty cool.
But I would only play with them like every so often because like, if I understood correctly, because I had like a dictionary beside me that I got, if I understood correctly, basically they were playing before they went to work. And yeah, so or whatever time shift that they worked on, they were playing before they worked. So we would play for like an hour or something like that, exploring and whatnot past the Elven city. And it took me forever to get anywhere. And yeah, so I played it a lot solo. I would only really play with other people if they invited me, because I had like two or three like online friends that I played with and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, unless people needed like a person who was my class, because I wasn't full healer, I was more utility. So I could like I could help out with like buffs and stuff like that, and a little bit of extra damage and stuff. But yeah, that was kind of like my experience with it. I found it really really fun. I later on went on to play like EverQuest and Dungeons and Dragons Online, and I got MMOs a lot more then, and got a lot further and more out of MMOs. But yeah,
Yeah.
I played Final Fantasy 11 on and off for probably a good couple years.
Okay.
But I didn't play it that often, so because I would play like for a month, like maybe like twice a week, and then I wouldn't play it for 2 weeks, and then I would play it again for like a week straight, and then not play it for like a month and a half, and then keep on going back and forth. And that was kind of like my experience with it. And by the time my other friend who finally started playing the game was playing it, I was kind of already done with the game, just because I think I experienced what I wanted to experience out of it, and I just kind of like moved on to other games by that point, because it just wasn't as fun as playing something new. So
Yeah.
yeah, how about yourself, Ian?
I mean, I had a different experience, but that's the theme of today, having different experiences. Yeah, I played 11 on console. There's some guys that I worked with. Actually, I think one of them was one of your friends.
Yep.
Who picked it up like a year later.
Yeah, that's definitely one.
He was playing it with one of the guys that I worked with, and they kind of convinced me to pick it up. And we called around. We found an EB that still had a copy of it with the hard drive, because you had to have the hard drive.
Yeah, that was another big thing too, because I wouldn't want to worry about getting the hard drive and stuff like that. It's just whatever, I got a computer.
Because that was like $200, I think,
Yeah,
for the
it was
game with the hard drive. Now, I will say this: the hard drive was fantastic. I do love having it. It's been a great, I guess, like bank for all of my save files.
Yeah.
So I have a ton of stuff from my PS2 era that's still in good shape, because I haven't had memory cards batteries dying.
Right.
They're all
flash memory. They don't have batteries, but yeah.
Listen. Anyways, I don't have to worry about memory cards getting lost or damaged.
Yep.
It's physically attached to the system. Yeah, I just it's a pain that you have to transfer stuff from it to a memory card.
Yeah.
But anyways, so yeah, I had a similar experience with the install where it took forever. And I
Yeah.
was, like I said, I was on either DSL or cable at the time, so I had a lot better download speed than you did.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have to worry about a phone call interrupting it either. But yeah, I remember kind of sleeping on and off and being like, oh, and then having to wake up and enter in something and then being able to sleep again. And yeah, it took me a good probably until the next morning where I could actually like log in and play.
Right.
And the guys that I'd been talking to, they didn't have a healer. One of them was a tank. The other was some kind of damage class.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, I'll make a white mage.
Mm-hmm.
I can get behind that. And then I barely played with them because they were a considerably higher level than me.
Yeah, that was the other thing too, where like since I didn't play as like I played sporadically for Final Fantasy 11,
Yeah.
everybody who I was playing with or met, they were like 10 levels ahead of me because that's
Yeah.
literally the only game they were playing. I'm like, okay. Like I don't really want to do that.
So I mean, I hustled pretty good.
Mhm.
I caught up to them eventually because your leveling progress does slow down significantly.
Yeah, it's exponential amount of experience required.
Exactly. And once you leave the like starting area,
Yeah.
I remember moving. I could solo everything in the starting area
Mhm.
without issue. It was a breeze. I moved into the next area, and it was just there was groups of people
Mhm.
just sitting right at the edge of the zone,
Yeah, that totally opened
waiting
up the games for you.
waiting to like fill out a party. And what
Mhm.
was great for me was being a full heal white mage.
Mhm.
As soon as I walked in, it was, hey, do you need a party? You looking for a party? So I did get to group up with strangers quite frequently.
Mhm.
I didn't make any long-term friends because that's me. Anyways, yeah, I could just kind of go around, and I was a decent healer because you just target the tank, keep them alive, make sure that everyone's doing okay, and yeah, your party's gonna love you. So 20 was a big milestone. I can't remember what exactly it was, whether you could like get a subclass or maybe get a mount. It
Yeah, I
was
don't remember.
20 was something big, and it was something that I was working towards. And I we the monsters were so hard that you would move to a section. You could pull one mob. You'd have like a ranger
Mhm.
pull one mob,
Yep.
and then your warrior would jump in and start tanking damage. You'd focus on healing him and keeping him alive.
Yep.
And yeah, you'd eventually take it down. Like it would take time
Yeah.
to take down this one little goblin.
Yeah, I remember the mobs and the level of like especially the bigger ones taking a lot of time to take out.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Mhm.
And anyways, so I was right on the edge of 20. We pull this monster. We finally take it down. I get my level. We're kind of like gonna heal up and maybe do a little bit more, and then bam, goblin spawns right in the middle of our party, wipes us entirely. I de-level back down to 19 because that was a thing in the original version of Final Fantasy 11.
Yeah.
If you died, you would lose experience.
Yeah, and
you
would
could
if you could.
de-level.
Yeah, I found that so annoying. That happened to me a lot in the game, and I think that's one of the reasons why I started playing the game sporadically.
Yeah.
Because like I'm like the first couple weeks that I played it like religiously, and then that I don't know how many times I de-leveled it.
I played it all the time, and then that happened to me. I put it down. I'm like, honk this. I am out. But then they re-released it on the 360
Mhm.
quite a few years later, actually. And I got right into it on the 360. I
Cool.
played quite a bit. It was a lot nicer because they took out some of the bullshit like the de-leveling. There was voice chat because that was available through Xbox Live.
Right.
And it was cross-platform. You could play with somebody on PC.
Mhm.
So my wife was playing on the PC, or I guess she was my girlfriend at the time, but whatever. She was playing on the PC, and one of our friends was playing on Xbox.
Cool.
And yeah, a couple of my friends actually were playing on Xbox, so we actually had like a bit of a party. I got quite a bit farther, but again, I fell off. It started to lose interest for me,
Right.
and yeah, I never picked it up again. And then I guess it would have been like 2 years ago. Superfan Rachel out there kind of convinced myself to pick up Final Fantasy 14.
Oh, okay, cool.
Actually, I think it would have been 3 years ago, just before their first expansion. Now, I started playing at Realm Reborn.
Yeah, most people did.
Yeah. So I don't know anything about it sucking prior, but I thoroughly enjoyed playing 14. It
Cool.
was a lot of fun. We had a group. I played a black mage. Well, was a thaumaturge, which then at a certain point you can level into black mage. They had a job system as well, and it was fairly well done. Where you might need certain, you might need X amount of levels in this and X amount of levels in this to get this, and your character you could just keep changing, and like on the fly as well. Like,
Yeah.
you could switch to, I want to, or not on the fly. I guess I think you have to be in town, but you could swap to, say, a damage class if you didn't have one in your party, or you could switch to a healing class if that's what your party needed. You'd still need to, like, it would be whatever level you were.
Yeah, it would be like logging into another character.
You wouldn't have to go through the hassle of switching out, like logging out, logging back in.
Yeah, which
reconnecting with your group.
I actually had, I think, like 3 characters in Final Fantasy 11, and I had to log out and back in order to.
So it was really, really well done in that sense. We went through some of the big instances.
Cool.
We took down some of the big bosses. It was a lot of fun. The boss fights were great. I think we went through Ifrit for sure, and I can't remember the second one. I know we did at least 2, maybe a third.
Okay.
But they were good. The story was decent. We had fun. I put it down again because it's ADD. Something shinier came along, and I jumped on that.
I think most gamers have that problem.
I know, right? Well, it's hard. You've got to be
so much.
You've got to be built for MMOs, I feel like.
Yeah.
You got to be really committed to playing one game and one game only. But I did end up downloading it on the PC eventually, and I played again with good old superfan Rachel.
Cool.
On PC.
Right.
And it translated fine.
Yeah.
If anything, to be perfectly honest, I found it controlled a little bit easier on console.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the games that are cross-platform now, they're definitely have more of a mind to like design the interface so that it works better on consoles.
Yeah.
Because before it was very clunky. From what I have seen from different games and like Final Fantasy 11, like I saw it on console, and it did not look as like easy to play. Yeah.
It wasn't. But anyway, so that's kind of some of our experiences with the online versions of Final Fantasy. I don't think either of us played a ton of Tetramaster.
No, I didn't really. I liked the card game in 8, as I mentioned before in the episode, but I didn't really.
If it was online Blitzball, I would have been in. Sign me up.
Yeah, I'm surprised that wasn't a thing.
The only other kind of point that I would really like to make that's kind of random is Dissidia, which came out on the PSP. And when that came out, I mean, it was a fighting game that was Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Which was kind of neat. It wasn't great. There's been 2 others, another one on the PSP and then one on the PS4.
Yep.
I have them, but I haven't played any. I think my PS4 one's still sealed.
Oh, wow.
I don't think I ever opened it even. But that's not the point. The point is, when it first came out, my friend and I were so pumped that we went out, we bought it, and then like a whole bunch of us were going out for dinner, and we're like, okay, that's fine, whatever. And me and him were sitting at the restaurant with our PSPs, trying to figure out how to like get them to connect locally,
right,
so that we could be playing playing versus against each other at this restaurant, and we sat there like the whole meal. Like,
Yeah.
we paused it to eat, and then like we were just totally not even engaged in conversation. I don't think I played any more of it after that, because that was the best time I had playing it.
Yeah.
But still, it was neat that A, it was a fighting game, B, that they put it on the PSP of all places, to put something that is so multiplayer focused
Right.
on a single handheld.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, to have like a local and online Actually, I shouldn't say there was online. There probably was, actually, because you could connect wirelessly on the console. But just to be able to play local multiplayer with another console,
Mm-hmm.
well, that was pretty dope. We had a lot
it
of
was
fun with that.
definitely really cool.
But on the multiplayer thing,
Mm-hmm.
kind of our last point on this.
Yeah. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles.
Crystal Chronicles.
Yeah, I unfortunately haven't played this game that much, but I did have one friend who had also played it in college, and we played a little bit of it. But I'm super looking forward to the remake because I think it's going to make it a lot easier for us to play it.
I hope
'Cause
so.
before, like we thankfully both had a Game Boy Advanced, and he had the game, and I bought an adapter and he had one.
You found the link cables.
Yeah. So, but now you don't have to do that.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
They're going to come out specifically with a link cable to plug your Switch into the Switch that you're playing with.
Maybe.
So you get that authentic, and then they'll have a little hub that you have to buy separately.
Okay.
To connect 4 of them.
Yeah, no.
If you do that, Nintendo, call in shenanigans, because that's a brilliant idea. You're going to make so much money.
But yeah, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, I didn't play too much of it. I know you've played a lot more of it, but it was really enjoyable from the experience that I had with it. And I hope I can get the full...
full blast of Crystal Chronicles.
Yeah.
My only complaint was always somebody has to be the cup bitch. And for anybody who has played, you understand exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, with the miasma.
Yeah,
I had actually kind of forgotten about this. You had to re-explain it to me.
Nobody wanted to be the cupbearer.
Yeah.
And like realistically, sure, you get to a place where you're going to fight, drop it, and fight. But then you're confined to the little bubble.
Right.
And sometimes, a ranged monster's outside of it, or you're at a boss fight and the boss moves, or you need to move to avoid damage.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons why somebody needs to constantly have that cup in hand. And you don't want to be that guy. Yeah, it's a totally necessary role, but you don't want that to be you. You want to be the hero.
Yeah.
But I loved the way they had magic through the orbs.
Yeah, that was really
which
cool.
you could switch out.
That's the one part that I remember the most about the game is the magic system.
The classes were cool. I loved going back, like picking your family. Like you chose your background, and then based on your background, you'd get a letter from your family every year, and you would get something based on that.
Yeah.
So it was really neat. My most recent experience with it, playing with 2 friends. Yeah, we had so much fun. I think we would try to get together once a month,
right,
and play through at least a year if we could.
Right.
Yeah. No, I'm really, like I said, I'm really looking forward to the next one coming out.
Yeah.
It's, as far as Final Fantasies go, it is very different from your standard.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's kind of like a game with Final Fantasy tagged on to it, but
yeah, but to me it's
got a lot of the Final Fantasy elements of it, obviously, but
yeah, it has a lot of the trappings of Final Fantasy, like these little fuckers here.
Yep. There's a lot of Moogles.
A lot of Moogles. But yeah, no, I'm super pumped, and I'm super pumped to see where they go. I know it's probably going to be another 20 years before we get another mainline installment, but
yeah, well, they've done a couple of other ones, like they did one for the Wii and one for the DS, for Crystal Chronicles. So
I mean, I'm saying mainline installment, the Final Fantasy 16.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
It's going to be like 20 years before we get the next one.
I don't know if it'll be that long, but you never know.
It'll feel like it.
Probably. Yeah.
But yeah, tell us what was your first Final Fantasy experience? Where do you hate the series? How do you feel about the draw system? Are you super pumped about Dissidia 4?
Maybe. There's some fans out there. There has to be. They made 3 of them.
I mean, sure. You know what? It's not that there's fans. It's that there's idiots like me who just keep buying them. But if you made it this far, feel free to click that little subscribe button right here and give us a little thumbs up.
Yeah.
It helps with the algorithm, JC tells me. I don't know what those words mean, but I feel like it's something important.
Yeah. Helps with the engagement of the episode.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll see you next Wednesday. For those who don't know, new videos every Wednesday. And
see you next week.
See you next week.
Oh, we should have centered these. Oh, well. You can only really see 3 of them. No, I just mean my head is covering a bunch of them.
Yeah, and I don't want to move them for continuity purposes.
Yeah, that's fine.
At least we're consistent.